All righty, good Saturday to you. Thanks for finding us here at Fox 26. This is your tropical update. We've always enjoyed this opportunity to dive into things a little bit more and talk about what's happening in the tropics. It's been very helpful this year. Normally within a newscast, they give us 2 or 3 minutes, and that's not enough to get all the business discussed within the local as well as a national and even tropical level. So this is all about the tropics and mostly focused on the Atlantic basin, and that's what we're going to be doing today. And we're here every day of hurricane season, and even though we're busy, we're still looking at hurricane season coming to an end pretty quick, kind of like right around the corner. And at this point, we are still focused on Sara. Sara is a tropical storm. And as it was developing in the Western Caribbean, some of those long-range models kept it to be more of a problem and even impacts on the U.S. All of that has lessened quite a bit. But the threat and the danger and the serious situations where there is life-threatening flooding, that is still happening here in Central America. We are seeing this rounds and rounds of rain in the northern portions of Honduras, which is somewhat of a mountain terrain, and those flash floodings, those mudslides, definitely occurring as we've seen inches upon inches of rain, even up to a foot or more of rain in some areas. And again, that's the type of topography that is not helpful for that sort of situation. We're also looking at other portions of Central America. They're going to be dealing with some problems with Guatemala and then continuing into portions of Mexico across the Yucatan Peninsula. This is our 5-day forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. But as you can see, we're not going out a full 5 days. We're going to stop pretty much on Monday, maybe not even into Monday afternoon, but Monday in the morning, and it will lose its tropical characteristics. Those are all good things to be talking about. But still, what we're dealing with right now is a lot of rain for portions of Central America. That's going to be a situation in which has to be continually monitored, as this is going to be a problem for these folks. So I know that here with our Fox 26 tropical updates, it's not just the United States who's watching. It's not just, Southeast Texas. It's a bigger global audience, a lot of viewers here across the Caribbean. So we're glad you've continued to check in with us throughout this hurricane season, and we want to make sure that we're covering and talking about what's happening to you folks in Central America with Sara continuing to just drop more and more rain. Now, still some winds that we're dealing with as well, and so those winds are going to be the reason why we have the tropical storm warning. Let me back this up just real quick here. I didn't really point that out. I want to show you that the current sustained winds are at 45 miles an hour. So that's enough to create some problems, especially right along the coast, and we'll see that this continues to, as I talked about, weaken a little bit, and then eventually that's going to be sort of falling apart, not really able to make it out to the Gulf of Mexico as a tropical system, it looks like. But here's where we have those tropical storm warnings that are taking place. So officially, we watched this track as what we saw as Sara moved across the Caribbean. We were tracking it as an area of invest further over into the east even, and then right as it kind of got just past Jamaica, south of Jamaica, becoming a named tropical storm at that point, and then continued to move over and into that Western Caribbean as expected, just sort of stalled over here in the corner of the Western Caribbean, and that's where all of the rain continued to fall, and we're continuing to see more and more rain kind of coming along with that. And it's been difficult to really pinpoint the center of where this system is. So if it kind of jumps around a little bit, partly that is because of that difficulty to really pinpoint the center of it, but also just the massive amounts of rain. It's sometimes hard to, again, find that with just satellite views. We've had a few Hurricane Hunter flights in there, and that's just something that you'll notice, that it's moving so slow, it kind of reorganizes a little bit. So that's what we'll be looking at. So this high pressure that's been more or less in the Florida region, that's been one of the reasons that's really helped kind of push this system far down to the south, and then it just didn't really want to have any other steering currents. But what's going to happen is this high pressure is going to weaken and slide back a little bit, and this front that we can see kind of moving into Texas now is going to continue to move on in. And then as that does so, that'll give Sara the encouragement at least to lift into the Gulf of Mexico. But then as soon as that front gets here, it just kind of falls apart and gets, I think the term that we're using the most now is absorbed. It's just going to kind of get absorbed into that front, and it'll just be some moisture that kind of rides along up into the southeast. So remember, we were looking at some possibilities at some point that this would keep its tropical characteristics and run up into the southeast of the U.S. Not expecting that to happen. The general motion is still expected, which is what we see here on our computer modeling, but this is not expected to be a tropical system. Once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, it becomes just sort of an unorganized group of moisture, and it's not going to be anything like what we were seeing in some of the modeling earlier. This general motion is still going to be there, and this is where that remnants is going to end up, but it's not going to have nearly the punch, nearly the strength of anything like a tropical system. So we can still see here in our computer modeling that rotation with the winds showing that low pressure system, all of the rain, but watch, as soon as this gets to a landfall, which would be a second landfall, by the way, it did make landfall in Honduras, but once it makes another landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula here, I think probably Belize is where that would happen at, depending on exactly where it takes its track. It falls apart real quickly. So we'll move this forward. And again, we see that rotation, and then it just sort of kind of unwinds and becomes a broad area, not even having a low pressure system. And then here's that cluster of moisture, and we could kind of just track this just a little bit as it continues to move and get kind of pushed. But then even that front's probably going to push it out even before it can really make contact much with the U.S. That part is a little less confident exactly how it'll unfold. But the motion is there, and it does look like it'll be much weaker. It is not going to be that tropical cyclone that we were thinking earlier that might be a possibility, at least. Definitely something that was a possibility. But we really do want to watch and see all of this unfold now as we expect it to. Down to Sara on the naming. Tony would be next. At this point, there doesn't seem to be anything else out there expected within hurricane season, meaning the end of November. But of course, these names, this list of names runs all the way through the end of 2024. It's been such an unusual season anyway. If there was something else to be popped up, 4 or 5 weeks from now, which is something that could be happening, you never know. We've seen tropical systems outside of hurricane season, then it would still be using that same name list, at least until we get to January. And we'll kind of see how that all goes. We'll continue to keep you updated, though. Like I said, we're here every day through November at least, and we'll expect to see you back here again tomorrow.